It's a brand new year, but you're still having the same silly arguments with your child and you want to make it better. If you want to know some easy things that you can do today to make your relationship with your child better, stay tuned. Hi everybody, welcome back to Project Happy Home. For those of you who are new here, I'm Tanya, a doctor, lawyer, turned homeschool mom of 3 kids ages 11, 8, and 6. In today's video, I am collaborating once again with my good friend Danielle over at TakeCareMama to talk about ADHD parenting and some simple tips that you can implement right away to get your relationship back on track with your child. If you're interested in more videos about ADHD and other videos that Danielle and I have collaborated on together, you should definitely check out her channel, which I will link in the description box down below, as well as my ADHD playlist. Now, if you don't have a child with ADHD, these videos in that playlist might still be relevant to you because I have found that my parenting overall has improved greatly by all the research and study and effort that I've put into gentle parenting so that my relationship with my child who has ADHD has improved. In doing that, my parenting has changed for all of my children, and that empathy, that gentle parenting, that extra step that I take has improved my relationship with all my kids. So whether or not you have kids on the spectrum, whether or not you have kids who have sensory processing disorder or are on the autism spectrum or have ADHD or have emotional sensitivities, whatever it is, if you have difficulty relating to your child, if you find yourself in the same push and pull situation a lot of those videos can be helpful to you. We have actually called the series of videos various different things. ADHD 101, Parenting ADHD 101, Parenting Emotionally Challenging or Emotionally Complex Children. We are all, in a way, emotionally complex, aren't we? And especially after a year like 2020, we have seen a lot of that complexity come to the surface. I think a lot of us felt depleted last year. I think this year is a continuation of 2020. I think that as the pandemic quarantine continues, as our activities have narrowed, as our social circles have narrowed, a lot of our own emotional deficits have come to the surface. No matter how gentle you are typically, no matter how well regulated you are typically, I think between children and parents in general, regardless of any neurodiversity, there have been challenging days in our homes. I think the very first thing you can do is just to acknowledge that this is a challenging time. I am very hard on myself as a person. I think it's hard for me to acknowledge that I'm having a difficult time, that it's okay to feel this difficulty. I feel this inherent urge to always push towards more of a perfect place to be, a perfect response, a well, even-keeled response. And I think that it's important to be kind to ourselves this year. My word for the year is kind, a reminder to be kind to myself first so that I can spill it out onto the rest of my family members and my friends. I think that as parents, it's really important to acknowledge that this year, this situation that we are all in is very hard. For some of us, it's hard because of economic reasons and work issues. For some of us, it's hard because we're with our children so much more than normal. For some of us, it's hard because we're very social creatures and we want to be out. And now our whole worldview, the way we interact with the world and each other is shifted. It can be hard for a myriad of different reasons, and it doesn't matter why. What does matter is that you are kind to yourself in this moment. Because if you do not have that practice of being kind to yourself, you will bring that meanness to others as well. If you are very harsh when you judge yourself and your mistakes, you will be harsh when you judge your children's. So very first thing you can do is just try to speak to yourself kindly. The small animal of your soul. It's what I always tell my children, be your own best friend. Try to speak to yourself when you mess up, and also really believe in a growth mindset for yourself and for your children. Whatever mistakes you have made in the past, they are in the past, firmly in the past. And we have habit tracks in our brain. We have habitual responses to stimuli. When our child forgets to put something away or when our child raises their voice to us, we have a habitual track that runs in our mind, and it is easy for our brain to return to that track. Even before we actually genuinely feel upset, our brain has already seen the stimulus and said, you normally scream and yell about this thing. So it falls into that track. But what we have the power to do is to shift it, shift the needle and make a new track. And really what it requires to do that is so small. It is just a few seconds, and your brain is highly evolved. It's well evolved enough that with a few seconds of pause, you can prevent it from going down that habitual track. More than anything, practice just stopping. When you feel a feeling, this rise of emotion, this rise of intense anger or fear or annoyance or just rage or whatever it is, that upswell of feeling, before it reaches your mouth or your hands or whatever external display of frustration, just stop. You don't have to say the right thing. You don't have to remember exactly what that article said to say or what the counselor said to say. Just stop. If you can practice nothing else, I would say practice stopping. When you feel an upsurge of emotion, notice just for a second, what is it that's happening in your body? And you'll notice I'm doing this because for me, it feels like this heat that rises and this buzzing in my ears. And there's this physical sensation of panic, of being suffocated somehow, of this sameness of this misbehavior coming at me again. Sometimes it's just noise. For me, I'm a very highly sensitive person. Sometimes it's just the volume of whatever was said. It's not even what was said that is causing the irritation. Take the time to stop when you feel that feeling. You do not need to be a perfect parent in that moment, but what you can focus on is not causing more harm and raising the temperature of the situation. You can just stop. I think so much of parenting is that self-reflection, that pause. So much of healthy interaction with people lies in that pause. Do you have the ability to just pause and take a bird's eye view of it for a second? Okay, this is what is happening right now. I feel really upset about this. My child isn't doing their homework, for example. I don't understand why this is so difficult. I am feeling really frustrated that this is taking up so much of my time when I have all of these other responsibilities. Feel all of that. Work through that thought, because the amount of time it takes you to work through those 3 or 4 ideas will be enough to bring you back to a place of calm. It'll be enough for that, your prefrontal cortex, your thinking part of your brain, to reach down and calm your amygdala again, that center part of your brain, that fear, that flight, all of those stress hormones being released out of there. That will be enough. You just need the pause. That will be enough time for you to come back to reality. This is not an emergency. There is no tiger in the room. Everyone is safe. And now you can actually ask those questions. Because if you really don't understand why the homework is taking so long, there is nothing wrong with you saying, in a curious way and not a punishing, judgmental way, it looks like you're having difficulty with that. What about it is difficult for you right now? Is it that there's too many problems on the page? Is it that we've been doing this one topic too long? Do you think it would help you if I sat with you? Or do you think it would help you if I left for a bit? Do you think it would help you to move to a different area? Do you think it would help if we just took a 20-minute break and did something else and came back to it? You have the opportunity to be curious about your child. The way we each see the world is different. It is. Whether you're neurotypical or neuroatypical, we are each experiencing the same sensory input differently. If you can practice nothing else this year, because it's a long game, you guys, practice that pause. Step back from your child and be curious, like a reporter, like an investigator, like a curious friend. Sometimes, honestly, pretend they're not your child. Pretend they're just an interesting person who's wandered into your life. And you're just that helpful, family friend. Because honestly, sometimes we are so kind to the people who don't matter so much to us. And I think the closeness we feel with our children, that intense love, can make us so wrapped up in the stress of what every single action and misbehavior and good behavior means. And sometimes it's just a moment. Look at the sum total of all the emotions you've gone through over the last 24 hours. You're not any one of those things. You're not the mean thing you said. You're not the nicest thing you said. You're a mix of all of it. And so is your kid. I think we have a tendency to make our children into these black and white, flat paper images of themselves. They are these things. I think sometimes it's encouraged by all the things on social media, like those little graphics where people say, happy birthday, you're interested in these 5 bullet points, and this is the type of person you are. We feel this need to label and tape down and define our children. And when we have multiple children, I think we do it subconsciously. This one is nicer, this one is neater, this one is more outgoing, this one is more shy. I think we are always changing. I think there's this illusion that we change just in childhood and we harden into something. I think we are always changing. There is no end. I think we change until the moment we leave this earth. That in and of itself should make us more forgiving. There is always the opportunity to do better. There is always the opportunity to do worse. If we can pause before we make a situation worse, I think that's the greatest gift we can give to our children, to our spouses, to our friends. Actually be curious about the other person instead of just reacting to them. Be curious about your own emotions and be curious about your child's situation and their emotions and their difficulty. Come towards them with some measure of distance and respect, the way we respect strangers. I think sometimes intimacy can breed contempt, particularly with our children. We feel like we can say anything, that we can be anything, that we can act in ways we would never dream of acting towards our acquaintances or our friends. Be curious about them as people, because they are not you. They are not extensions of yourself. They are going through this world experiencing it differently than you. And you are different than them. And there is a necessity for mutual respect, particularly in difficult times like these, in times of quarantine. And I think the way we teach our children to respect us is by respecting them. Just pause. Don't breathe. Don't do anything fancy. Don't think happy thoughts. Just stop talking and moving. Just stop for a second and just be curious about what happened. And then respond. And respond with generosity. So that's my first tip. Pause. Focus on your pause. Be curious and then respond kindly. Don't make the situation worse. My second tip is to not be lazy. And by this I mean we can be lazy with our children a lot. We expect that we've told you this 100 times, and literally it might have been 100 times, it might have been 1,000, it might have been 10,000, and we expect that to be enough. And it's not, and we can see that it's not, and the evidence is there that it's not. And now we have 2 choices. We can either keep responding with anger and saying, I've told you this 1,000 times. I've warned you that if you didn't do this, this would happen. I told you that we were about to leave. Da 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 da. I have given you enough, more than enough, of instruction, of scaffolding, of training, and you are still not there. And I don't understand. And the reason I'm saying it like this is because it is a tantrum. It is us being upset that the effort that we have put in is not being returned. And we have 2 choices here, right? We can either tantrum about this situation. This is the fact. We might have tried our very best. We might have put up the posters. We might have put up the lists. We might have done all the reminders. And it's still not happening. Like we're still not seeing the results we want. In that moment, we can either just keep doing that same pattern, keep doing these things that aren't working, keep getting mad about the fact that they're not working, or we can keep trying new things. We can stick with the things that we see are working. We can try new things for the pieces that aren't working yet. And we can be patient with the process. Be really studious of what is working and compliment and give positive reinforcement for every success, whether it's tiny or big. We can notice things as opposed to being judgmental about things. I have a real problem with being judgmental about things after the fact, where I'm nice for like half an hour about something, and then I just explode with a pithy little spiteful judgmental comment at the end. That is my MO, where I've been patient, I've said all the right things, and then like at the end of it, I'm like, I'll say something that's a little bit too biting, a little bit cutting, and it's meant to wound. And that's a harsh thing to say about myself, but that is what it is. Like, I can find my way to that place where I'll say something that makes it clear that I have done my part and you have not done yours. And I think when we do that, we diminish our child a little bit. It is a little lash, right? It's a verbal whip. And I think we should all work on not doing that. It is a lazy action. There are many ways to encourage each other to do better. And I don't think wounding is ever the way. It's really important to be kind. I know this sounds really simple, but it is, because when you have done the work and it's been 1,000 times of saying something and it's still not happening, that child is not doing it or not behaving in the way you would like because they want to see you upset. No child wants that. They're doing it because for whatever reason, they're not there yet. Their mind has not gotten to the place where that is their habitual behavior in response to whatever stimulus you've given. Whether they're supposed to put their clothes in the hamper, or whether they're supposed to do their homework on time, or whether they're supposed to keep a neat room. They have not gotten to a self-driven place for that yet. And there might be tips and techniques and all of these things that we can do on the way there, but we cannot be lazy about it. If your child needs to be touched and told something gently, do that. Don't call at them from another floor in an angry way. Take the walk, find them, put your hand on their shoulder, take the opportunity to give them a hug and say, I noticed that your room is a mess. And say it with a smile, because it's really hard to hug your child and say things with anything but a smile. Because I think we hug them and we smell them and we remember them as babies, and you can annoy them as a preteen and stuff by doing that, but everybody likes being hugged. Everybody likes to feel that they are, loved. Not the people who genuinely don't like to be hugged, don't do that. But do whatever makes them feel warm. You know your child best. Do something that makes them feel loved when you ask them or remind them of things that haven't been done. There is no reason that we can't marry those two things. I really want to work on that this year. I don't do a good job at it. I do it sometimes, but not nearly as much as I would like. And if I reflect on it every single time that I ask something with closeness and kindness, it is met with a smile and a rueful grin and compliance. And every time I yell about something, it might get done, but I'm left feeling bad and he's left feeling bad, and it doesn't engender the feelings of confidence and love and security that I'm aiming for in my house. Basically, the two takeaways are this. 1, work on your pause. Be curious about your own emotions, be curious about your child's, and act impersonal sometimes to find out what's really happening, to find out how you can help. Maintain that little distance so that you can find your politeness again and your respect for that child. And my other advice is to not be lazy and to really try to ask with kindness, with closeness. Draw their attention to you in a positive way, and then ask or remind or notice what has not been done. So those are my 2 big things. I hope this video was helpful. I hope to do at least 1 video on ADHD and just parenting emotionally complex kids every month this year. It'll probably be on the last week of the month, so stay tuned for those. If you want to make sure that you get all those videos, be sure that you're subscribed and hit the notification bell, because apparently if you don't hit the notification bell, you don't see anybody's videos anymore. As always, you guys, thank you so much for spending some time with me. Don't forget to check out Danielle's video in the description box down below, and I wish you the very best day.